Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the final video in my How to Grow Blueberries series. We've covered the basics of blueberries, container planting blueberries, how to pick blueberries, how to plant them in the ground, and this final episode I'm going to cover propagation. I have shot another series on propagation, which I'm going to link right here. I would advise that you watch that because I'm going to go pretty quickly through the details of propagating blueberries. I won't cover every single detail of how to propagate things in this video. And that video series has over 10 videos and would be very, very helpful. I'm going to put this flat that I'm sticking these blueberries in into a mist house, which I showed how to construct in the other series. If you'll follow along with that, you'll see how to do that. I'm also going to stick some in a more basic little high humidity structure. I'll show you that at the end of the video. So let's get started. So let's cover the basics of what I'm using. I'm actually using a 50 cell tray. These are 50 individual cells in these trays. The mix I used in here is 50% peat moss and 50% perlite. You can root pretty much anything in that. I cover that in the other series if you want to take a look at that. There's some additional things you could use if you want to. But for these blueberries, 50% peat, 50% perlite is absolutely perfect. Kind of hard to wet the peat moss, so it takes me a couple times watering this. I just watered this like 3 times to get this thoroughly wet throughout the entire depth of the media. I'm using Dip and Grow, which is a liquid rooting hormone. You could use a powder if you choose to. The cuttings are being taken in early summer, which is kind of the ideal time to be taking the cuttings. We're using semi-hardwood cuttings, which I'll show you in just a second. And for that, we use 1 part Dip and Grow mixed with 10 parts water. I just cut down a little plastic cup to use as my saucer to dip the cuttings into. I definitely label every tray that I ever make. The labels tend to stick up too high and will block the water from getting to the flat, so I'll usually cut them in half and mark them with the variety. There are hundreds and hundreds of varieties of blueberries, so it's important that whatever blueberry plant you're taking the cuttings off of, especially if you're going to sell them. Obviously, if you're keeping them for yourself, it doesn't matter what variety it is. If you have any intent to sell them, you need to know what variety it is. It's very important. We make sure we use a permanent marker of some kind because anything else will get washed off very easily in a very wet, humid propagation setting. And I'm using this pair of Corona snips. They're AG 4930. All of these items I have linked below in the description of this video if you're interested in taking a look at them and getting them for yourself. So now I'm going to show you how I went about collecting these cuttings. So here's a blueberry plant like you would purchase from any nursery. You can take cuttings off blueberries planted in the ground, but if you're going to, I would make sure you fertilize them in the late winter, early spring, the year you're going to take the cuttings on them, and make sure they're very vigorous. If they're anemic or off-colored, or have disease issues or just not thriving, you'll get a very low percentage on your rooted cuttings. These container plants, you can see this plant was cut right about here in the late winter. We're not very concerned about getting blueberries on the plants in the nursery. We're trying to get nice full plants, and it has grown from the time it leafed out in April until now. It's probably grown 14 inches. This wood that is now green right here, that's kind of firm, it's a little more difficult to bend it, is the absolute perfect material to use for rooted cuttings. This material up at the top is very soft and it will root. You could actually root this material, but it's kind of difficult. It takes absolutely perfect conditions to do so, so I usually will dispose of that material and use this piece from here down to here, and we can probably get 3, even 4 cuttings off of one of these single stems. So this is a pile of cuttings I had collected earlier. This center piece in this one, I'll collect that whole piece, but I'm not going to use the center part of this. It's an older piece of wood and will definitely root much slower. It will root, but I like to take consistent cuttings, and I'll take this year's growth that's maybe 2 months old. It's very important that we keep this material moist. I'll usually keep a mist bottle close by and hit these occasionally if I've got them laying out on a table, or I just keep them in a plastic bag. I showed how to collect cuttings in a plastic bag in one of the videos in the other backyard plant propagation series videos if you want to take a look at that. But I'll take this piece and just come back to this main stem with the object of just disposing of this center heavier woody stem. I'll discard that. This material here is actually hardened off all the way to the top. I don't have any new growth on this. I could actually take this one all the way to the top. I'd like to have a couple of places where I'm removing leaves right on the bottom of the cutting, like this. The area where that is wounded is a spot that will likely get roots from. I'll keep about 2 leaves, maybe even 3. I'm going to keep 3 leaves on this one. That's an ideal cutting right there. I'll put a fresh cut, angled cut on the bottom of it, and then if you want to, you can go along the bottom and just scrape off the side of that cutting. But this is an ideal piece. It's a slightly rigid piece of material from this year's growth that I took off a very vigorous plant, which is very important. I'm going to dip that into the dip and grow for just a second, tap that off a little bit, and then when I put this into this tray, I'm only going to stick this cutting about halfway down and pinch it in. It's very tempting to slam these cuttings all the way to the bottom, but the bottom area of these flats is way too wet, and you will get disease issues if you do that. The roots, for the most part, will just come out near the surface anyway and root downward, so it doesn't really even do you any good to anchor them all the way to the bottom. But again, I'll take the bottom 2 leaves off of this one, put an angled cut on it, scrape it off. Just make a little scrape like that. That's where we'll get our roots coming from, is where we took these leaves off and where that cut is and where that scrape is. I'll stick it in there and pinch it in. Now, there's no real difference in blueberry varieties at all. So once you learn this technique, it doesn't really matter what variety it is. Again, the main issue with these blueberries is the best time to do it is in the early summer, as this wood is slightly hardened off. You can do hardwood cuttings in the winter time. It's very possible. You will get a very low percentage typically. I'm going to take the bottom of that one off, leaving 3 just like that, taking my little piece off the side, dipping it, sticking it in halfway and pinching it in. I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of this tray. Okay, I completed this flat. All these cuttings are very consistent across the whole flat. I put my label in here. These are Tiff Blue blueberries, so I just put TB on that tag and the month and year on there, so I'll know when I stuck these cuttings. I took some additional cuttings that I'm going to stick in a different technique that I'll show you that is not quite as involved. This flat right here is going to go into my mist system. Here's the flat of blueberries we did. The other things that I've stuck in this house is a mixture of other flowering shrubs and trees. And again, you can follow that other backyard plant propagation series to learn how I built this little hoop house and how this irrigation works, which will come on in just a second. I'll show you that, and then I'm going to show you our alternative technique for rooting these blueberries. So there you go. I've got it coming on about every 7 minutes for just a few seconds. Here's the other technique I'm going to be using to root these blueberries. I have about 10 or 12 more cuttings I'm going to put into here. This is just a wooden frame. It has a weed control fabric liner in it, and then under this plastic container, I've put the same mix into this flat as well, which is the perlite and peat moss 50-50. After I put these cuttings in, I'm going to stick them about halfway down in this soil and pinch them in exactly like I did on the flat. After I put these in, I'm going to put this cover back on it, and I'm actually going to slide it under my deck. I'm going to lift this cover up about once every few days, and I'm just going to spray a little water under it, and I'm going to seal it back up. The main thing is I don't want this in the full sun. If this is in the full sun, it will definitely cook the cuttings that are under here. All we're trying to do is hold some humidity in. So here are our cuttings already prepped and ready to go. Sticking them maybe inch down in there and pinching them in. I'm giving plenty of room from the edge for this cover to not hit them when I put this cover on. I'm gonna get about 2 rows of these blueberries, and so we're gonna have some in a little more sophisticated house, and then some in just really a humidity chamber is all this amounts to. But thank you for watching this video, and if you have any questions on rooting blueberries or any other types of things that need to be rooted, fruit plants, ask questions in the description of this video, and I'll do a follow-up video later in the summer and show you how these have rooted.